And now, from the Room 111 studios, it's Hacking Engagement with James Sternovich.
Hey there, listener. Welcome back to the Hacking Engagement podcast. I'm so glad you're here. Liz Jorgensen is an all-star high school English teacher from Wisconsin. Her brand new book, Hacking Student Learning Habits, just hit Amazon's virtual shelves. I'm confident that you'll be inspired to check out this book after listening to this interview. Liz articulates how she utilizes empathy to inspire learning. We also talk a lot about assessment, hence the title of this podcast episode. What I particularly love about Liz is that she's not self-promotional. She supplies oodles of examples of inspirational tactics from various subjects and grade levels. You'll hear us discuss why she decided to write the book, her ideas on assessment, how to help students thrive, inspiring intrinsic motivation, that's a good one, student feedback, authentic purpose, and growth mindset. Just maybe, Liz has an idea that'll transform your classroom. So sit back and absorb and consider. Our first episode of the Hacking Engagement podcast was released in 2016. I enjoyed podcasting so much that I decided to create a new show. And I'd love for you to give it a try. The Retired Teacher Coach podcast is available now on Apple, Google, and Spotify. I help educators make awesome health and lifestyle choices. I think you're going to love it. And now, back to the Hacking Engagement podcast. Well, here we are in the Room 111 studios, and I'm looking at my computer screen right now, and this little icon, which gives me the weather. And it says 60 and not a cloud in the sky. And I am recording this on St. Patrick's Day. And I'm here with a friend. Her name is Liz, and she lives in suburban Milwaukee. Say hello, Elizabeth.
Hello. Thanks for having me.
You have a nice voice.
Oh, thank you.
So, when you think of Wisconsin and you think of March, you think of winter just hanging on. But I looked at your weather today, and it looks good, mid-50s and partly cloudy. Is that accurate?
It is. I can't believe it. We are really blessed the past couple of days with some fantastic weather.
Do you have snow piles sitting around?
A few are hanging on. But
bitter enders, huh? Dead enders,
yes.
Whatever you say. That's interesting. Ours are gone, and I can tell you that as soon as I get done talking to you, I'm taking my ancient dog outside, and we're going to frolic in the yard.
That sounds wonderful.
That's a word you don't hear very often, isn't it?
Yes. Especially paired with ancient.
That's right. Good point.
Ancient frolicking, yes.
Okay, let's say you and I, we don't know each other at all. As a matter of fact, I don't know that we would know each other if we saw one another on the street. I think I might be able to pick you out, but I'm not sure. And let's just say that we don't recognize one another, and you and I, we climb into an elevator together, and I ask you a couple questions, and it becomes obvious pretty quickly that you are an author, and you are going to, well, actually, we're releasing this podcast on the day that your book became available. And so you're excited. And so I ask for an elevator pitch, and you just have a few floors before I get off. So what are you going to say?
Well, I'm going to say that my new book, Hacking Student Learning Habits, I hope that when you read it, you see yourself and your students in every chapter. And I hope that when you pick it up, you are inspired to try out some new things with your students, to implement what you learned immediately, and then to see those results happen, to see your students have more fun, to see your students take greater risks, to see them collaborate in new and exciting ways. My book really is about getting students to value the process of learning inside each classroom that they visit.
Okay, so you're talking about some recognition there. You're talking about some inspiration, And you're also talking about some evaluation.
Yeah, 100%.
All three things. Okay, I got to get off the elevator now.
Okay.
Okay, so when I first approached you and we talked, man, I think it's, gosh, a year ago, something like that. I don't know. It's been a long time, hasn't
Probably.
it? Yeah.
Yeah, it has.
And I was under the impression that the word assessment was going to be in your title. Now, before I ask my question, I'm gonna tell you something that I think that you might find interesting. You know this about me, but I think the first time I said it to you, you weren't aware, and this is the typical kind of reaction I get. I teach a class at Muskingum University called Assessment, and when someone asks me what I teach and I tell them that, they're like, "They have a whole class on assessment? Are you kidding me? That sounds really boring." And then that statement is often followed by the person telling me some type of horror story about a test they took when they were in school. I think we all have them. I have them. But I'm curious because assessment is obviously a big portion, a big focus of your book. What would prompt you to write a book like that on that topic?
Yeah, I am not a fan of grades, and I tell my students that, I did not get into teaching to grade. It's like one of my least favorite parts of the job.
Yeah.
And, I think that many people think that assessment means grading, and in my mind, it does not. Grades and assessment are not synonymous. As this book started unfolding, it really came from what I experienced with my students, and that was when I handed them a rubric, they then would look at it and say, okay, so I have to do X, Y, and Z to get an A, or C, B, and F to get a B. And what they did then is they didn't take risks. They didn't try out something that was creative. They didn't write what they really wanted to write. Instead, what they did was they tried to guess what I wanted them to do. And as I learned more and more about assessment methods, I realized, I just learned that there's different ways to do this thing called assessment, and we can do it really successfully if we focus on the process and not on the outcome. And, I think so many of our schools are outcome driven, and we can see the pitfalls of that, the negatives of that. And so in my book, I'm really trying to help teachers focus on the process, those small, measurable daily things that students do that will ultimately de-emphasize the importance or de-emphasize grades, and instead focus our students on what's important. And that is doing the little things right, showing up, putting in the time, learning from both what works and what doesn't, and then having the teacher there to help them assess how they're doing. And, I think assessment too it's not a one-way street. And grades are. You put a grade on something and then the learning is done. And obviously as teachers, that's not what we want. We want kids to engage with feedback in a way that makes their learning more effective, faster, better, whatever that means for you inside of your classroom.
As you were talking, I was thinking about something. I'm a fan of Laurie Santos, professor at Yale, who has a wonderful podcast called The Happiness Lab. And she did a podcast once on grades, and it was really funny. Well, sad and funny. I shouldn't say funny. Whoops. You got a PA announcement going on?
Exactly. Yeah, we're okay. We can keep going.
Okay. Hey, listen, man. Well, I got to get Liz on the mic when she's available, which is sometimes a stretch, isn't it?
Yes, exactly.
So in this Laurie Santos podcast on grades, a lot of it was the history of grades, and what a lot of people don't realize is grades are a pretty new phenomenon. I mean, they're only like about like what we think of grades, like A, B, C, D, like 3-point, 4-point. They're only about they're not even 300 years old. Isn't that something? So there was a lot of learning that took place prior to 300 years ago. So you don't need a grade for learning. something else that was so impactful when I listened to this podcast. Have you ever heard of the anagram experiments in the early 1960s?
Gosh, I don't know.
So, anagrams, isn't that just like a word that you have to, like the letters are jumbled and you have to figure out what it is?
Mm-hmm.
So they gave these like elementary kids these anagrams. And the kids were having a blast. And they were taking all kinds of intellectual risks. And they were trying the hard ones. And, laughing at themselves when they couldn't get them. And then they took another group, same age, same school, and they said, you're going to be graded on this. And what they found was the kids would always choose the easiest one so they didn't get a bad grade. So all the joy, all the intellectual risk, as you say, was gone. And then finally, the last point I wanted to make, and this reinforces what you're saying, is Laurie Santos has this incredibly popular class at Yale. And whenever she offers students to take the class for pass-fail, just straight credit, she never gets anybody to take her up on it. And she said it just breaks her heart because a lot of these students are incredibly stressed out and there's a pretty big workload in the class. And she's just like, just come in and enjoy the class. Don't worry about the grade. And she has a very hard time getting students to take her up on this. So the things that you're talking about are institutionally embedded, not only in our society, but in our kids. It's tough to break that.
It is. But like you're saying, if you can remove the focus on the grade, what you will see is an increase in risk-taking, an increase in collaboration. Like you were saying, those kids were laughing at each other,
right.
They're having joy. Yeah. And ultimately that makes for better learning. If you can come in every day and be excited about what you're going to tackle, you're going to have more success.
It's funny because in my college course on assessment, we do this big unit on creating an assessment. And when I start that unit, I bet you I have 70% of my students who say, I have test anxiety. It's so predictable. So it's an issue.
Well, and like you're saying, the system that we've created, is producing this kind of unnecessary anxiety. A student should be excited to share with the instructor what they've done, right? Give me your feedback. What do you think? How can we generate that kind of excitement rather than, like you're saying, a test will produce anxiety? That's not what we want.
Okay, so both of us, I think, are on the same page. We both are determined to make assessment an empowering learning experience. Is that an accurate statement?
Oh, totally.
So let's start with the basics, man. What mistakes do educators make, and how should assessment be done differently? I'm just going to kick back and listen, man. You go to town.
Sure. I think that I really value the process, and I would encourage instructors to think about how can I assess the process, not the outcome. What's wrong with assessing outcomes? Well, kids can't control outcomes. We can affect them a little bit, but ultimately it's out of our control.
Time out, Liz. I want you to stop for a second. I want you to keep going. I'm sorry I interrupted, but I want you to describe what you mean by process.
Sure. Well, that's going to look different in every single class. And so the instructor will have to look at their class and say, what is the process in my math class? What's the process in my choir class? How do we come in every day and do work that leads us to growth? So maybe in a choir class, the process would have something to do with some warm-ups. Maybe the instructor would say, our process is to loosen our jaw or to pronounce our vowels a certain way. Those little tiny things that you do within your classroom. A process in a Phi-Ed class might include, we bring a water bottle, or we use the restroom before we leave the locker room, or we pack our gym clothes the night before, right? All of those little things that lead us to success? What are those things that we can control? Those controllables are the process.
Okay. Again, I'm interrupting, but I like what you said, and I like the fact that you're using examples from various classes. Tell my audience what you teach.
Sure. I teach 11th and 12th graders, and I have them in writing classes. So creative writing, journalism.
I think it's really interesting that here we are 15 minutes into the interview, and that's the first time that was brought up. I think that that's powerful.
Yeah. Well, and I think that this concept can be applied to any class.
Good.
I was speaking to an instructor who teaches welding, and I know nothing about welding, but he explained to me that his classroom, he assesses the process. And he said for each student, the process looks a little bit different. And that's good. That's okay. The student needs to know what works for them when they stand in front of a machine or when they go to weld. Not everyone can do it the exact same way. And so by assessing the process, he allows kids some flexibility, some control, some ownership over their own process. And I think that that's what we want, right? We want to empower kids to know what works, what doesn't, and then how can you do more of what works and less of what doesn't work. And as he helps students, he's constantly assessing them in terms of giving feedback, asking questions, encouraging collaboration, asking students to compare either current welds with former welds or current welds with a model weld, or, and I think that every teacher, that's where my book starts, is what's the process within your own classroom? And then what system can you put in place to get students to value the process? How can you then assess the students as they move through their own process?
Okay, and going back to my question about what mistakes do you see educators make, they're not focused on that enough in your view, correct?
Yes, or they're too focused on outcomes.
Sure.
Maybe they look at, we need to get this percentage on our ACT scores to go up.
Right.
And so they do test prep questions. I would say, is that really what's going to help those students? Or maybe would a mindfulness strategy help? Like you were saying, if they're really struggling with test anxiety, what are the little things that students can control so that when they go into those kinds of situations, they can increase their likelihood of having success?
Okay, now this is interesting because obviously educators are part of the equation, but there's also students. And students can be darn conservative on this issue. They can be, just tell me what I have to do to get a B. And pretty stubborn in that paradigm.
Yeah, and I think, when we shifted to process-based assessment probably about 5 years ago, we saw that at the beginning. Kids were like, well, how do I get an A? It's like,
right.
well, no, we're not going to worry about grades. What we're going to worry about
You're not going to worry about it. I'm worried about it.
Yeah, no. And just really reassuring them that what we're going to worry about is you creating the best, insert your content area here, piece that you can, right? Whether that's a poem or it's a weld or it's a choir piece that you're performing, we're just going to focus on that. And at the beginning, you're right, the kids were very resistant, but it only took about a semester. And then word spread around the school that, oh my gosh, if you take creative writing, you get to write every day, and then the teacher helps you get better at your writing. Whereas in the past it was, oh, she's a hard grader, or, oh, I can't believe I got this, or I'm not sure what she wants. Now the rumor is that if you go into this class, you leave a better writer. Right. And my goodness, isn't that what we want? Grades are so low in my mind, and that then comes through in my instruction, in my assessments, and then the kids follow suit. Then they are more likely to just focus on their craft rather than their grade.
But it can take some time to make this adjustment.
Oh, yes.
And there are some students, they want the badge. They want the designation. And that is something you have to be cognizant of.
Very much so.
Yeah, and I I'm not going to let me just predict I get in trouble sometimes when I do this. I'm going to try to put words in your mouth.
Okay.
I might be totally unsuccessful. But I imagine what you would say when confronted with a student like that is that you would try to take them far beyond any place that they thought was possible and inspire them in ways they hadn't thought of before. And that's the challenge for the teacher, but could ultimately be, you could win over a massive, like, goal-driven convert that way.
Well, right. And I mean, our school systems, they're not doing us any favors, right? Honors, designations,
right.
or rankings, like they are programmed to want to outwit each other, to outplay each other. You know, when we look at cheating, it's rampant for those very reasons that kids think, oh, just give me your math packet. And then they quickly copy the answers for the grade, not for learning.
Good point.
And so when you're assessing the process, you take out that, you don't even have the option to cheat in my room because I'm not focused on the outcome.
That's
right? I'm focused on the little things that you cannot copy off of a worksheet.
Right. Okay, now that leads perfectly into my next inquiry. So ultimately, what's important to you is the students to be intrinsically motivated. Because, come on, man, everything I really value, I went out and sought out information on my own. I mean, it's there's nothing more rewarding than going on YouTube and figuring out how to fix your kitchen faucet. So intrinsic motivation is big. I know you have a passion for this. And you've also no doubt witnessed a number of fellow teachers who were darned good at inspiring their students when it came to intrinsic motivation, which is really important. So I've just talked. I'll shut up. You start talking.
Sure. Yeah. And I think part of it is, can we inspire our students to do anything? I'm not sure. But what I can do is I can show them some things that I'm really passionate about and then encourage them to, oh, I never thought about that. And then giving them the freedom to explore, like you're saying, if you're into fixing your kitchen sink, go for it. You want to write about cars? Every assignment all semester, I will learn a lot about cars. Let's go. You know, it's allowing them to have some ownership over their own interests, but then it's also giving them an opportunity to engage with what's outside of your classroom walls,
right.
like giving them an authentic purpose for what they're doing. So I'm not just writing this essay for a grade, but I'm writing this handmade card because I have a pen pal in a senior citizen home, right? And or something. We have at my school our tech ed classes. They create lawn decorations and furniture for your patio, and then they sell it to people in the community, to teachers, to parents, right? And so you're more motivated to make sure that that chair is of good quality because you're actually selling it to someone. We see, right, band classes or choir classes. They have performances. They go to music festivals. Maybe in a science class, you could tour a lab or visit a museum. A landscape ecology class.
Sure.
I know that they plant and they manage seeds for an annual sale. So then they price things and then they put them out into the community. I'm thinking like our foods and consumer ed class. They operate like a mini food truck and then they sell things, or they're having a chili cook-off right now. Right, all of these little tiny things that we can do to get kids excited, right? What kind of chili are you going to make? How is your chili going to be the best chili it can be? And then not comparing my chili necessarily.
I was wondering where you're going with that. I got the best chili, yours sucks.
Well, right.
I got a gold star.
Exactly. How can you use
That's funny.
competition in a positive way?
Well,
right? Even though maybe there's one winner, how can you engage them all in the process?
You said a couple of things there I really liked. I mean, let's face it. I mean, when everybody was in lockdown, just a few months ago, and everybody was doing virtual learning and whatever, I don't think a lot of students have a whole lot of patience with going into a box, which is what a classroom is, and being confined by that room. And you the phrase you used was outside, get them outside. And I like that. And one thing that was really interesting about my kind of silly fix the kitchen sink example was when my sink started leaking, I thought, how in the heck am I going to, I don't know. I'm not a plumber. I was discouraged. And then I just went on YouTube, saw a video, and went out and fixed it. Now, that was not an exciting video. That was not an exciting problem. But man, did I feel good about myself when I did that. So, that was totally an example of what intrinsic motivation can do. I mean, it was just like, I want an answer to this. By gosh, I'm going to find it and fix it. And, the days of everybody says this. I'm not saying anything new, but the days of the teachers being the gatekeepers of knowledge are long gone. So you might as well just forget about the fact that the students can get information. They can get ideas outside of you.
Oh gosh, and we want them to.
Yeah. Unfortunately, well, I think we do. Yeah. I think the vast majority of teachers do.
Yeah.
Now, here we go. You and I promote assessment as a process more than an event. So key to this process is feedback. Now, Liz, just in talking to you, I'm quite certain that you are outstanding in this department. I think we could all learn a lot from you. And so this, dear friend, is where you can just start yakking about feedback. Great topic, important topic. Go.
Yeah, I think I coached track and field for many, many years. And the athletes that I saw on my track team, they wanted feedback, right?
Sure.
They came to me and they said, how can I improve my times? How can I jump higher? How
Right.
can I run faster? And I want the students in my classroom to do the same thing, to come in and to badger me, right? Help me. What do you know?
Yeah.
How can I do this? And so I think that might be where teachers can start. How can you build a team-like atmosphere where kids see you as their coach, as the person who's going to help them, right? I think that sometimes students see teachers as, like you were saying, the gatekeeper. They hold that A, and I want to get the A. It's like, no, let's say that I'm here to help you, to guide you.
Right.
And part of it is showing up every day to practice. And part of it's not allowing kids to take a day off, to skip practice, if you will. I tell kids, think about this class like a basketball team. You go to basketball practice every day, and some days are better than others, but that's okay. Your coach is still there every day to give you feedback to help you along the way, right? Maybe one day you're struggling with your free throws, and so they say, tuck in your elbow, follow through,
sure.
Look at the rim, all of that stuff. And how can you build those kinds of mechanisms into your classroom?
Mm-hmm.
I think of feedback too as a loop. It's something that is continuous.
Good.
And so it's not just top down. It's us having a conversation. We also think about feedback that can happen between students or even self. How can I give myself feedback to improve? Yeah.
I had that experience, and as a teacher, getting feedback can be very humbling. You can be like, oh man, I wasn't prepared for that. You might have thought something went great, and a student points out something that you could have done much better, but man, that's how you get better.
Right. Well, and then building in this culture of it's okay to fail. You learned so much from that piece of feedback. Take in the feedback as neutral data. Of course, easier said than done, right? But as with anything, that uncomfortability lessens with practice. The more and more and more we give and receive feedback, the easier it gets to take in that feedback as neutral data and then then apply what you learned to get better.
I would say also that one thing the pandemic, empowered everyone to do was to get better at this in a virtual setting. And I can tell you that I know that with K-12 it might be more problematic, but just for security reasons. But I can tell you that the vast majority of feedback that I give my students is virtually one-on-one outside of classroom hours. And the beauty of that is you're not time bound. You're not like, oh gosh, I only have 3 minutes left in the period. So there's a great opportunity today to really have a lot more feedback with students.
Yes, it can also be entirely overwhelming. I have 180 students every semester.
Yeah.
So if 180 students write one page, think about the volume of time that takes just to read it. And then on top of that, provide feedback. I think that teachers need to think about, how can I instill that feedback inside my classroom minutes? What can you do while you're in the classroom to guide kids, just like you would at practice? How can you do that inside of the time constraints that you have? Or
you can also deputize students to work with one another.
Right.
So peer feedback can be very powerful.
And it's modeling. We spend a lot of time at the beginning of the semester learning not only how to give feedback, but also how to receive it. And then we model it over and over and over. And they get so much better. And I think genuinely at the beginning of the semester, they don't know what to say. They don't feel like they have the skills or the knowledge to give each other feedback. And so part of it is building them up. Part of it is scaffolding, right? Taking little tiny baby steps and saying, yeah, you can do this. You have really good insight. You have amazing things. Then you can help each other.
That goes back to your process focus. I like that. Now, two popular contemporary education concepts are authentic purpose and growth mindset. Now, many educators pay lip service to both. I have heard these phrases a lot. But inspiring and supporting it in kids is challenging. Describe your ideas about what these concepts mean and how they can be nurtured.
Well, I think authentic purpose, that's what we were talking about before, taking what you're doing and letting it live outside of your classroom walls.
Right.
We know that that's amazing for engagement, and also for student pride. We were talking about publishing our work, and I had a substitute who was in my class that day for a paraprofessional, and he said, why would anyone want their work published? I said, my goodness, that's a great question. Let's ask the kids, why would you want your piece published? And the things that the kids were able to communicate to the substitute just blew him out of the water. One kid said, I just want to be able to show my grandma my work in writing so that she's proud of me. My grandma had, and she went on and on and on. And then another kid said that they were hoping to add it to their resume or to their application. Or another kid just said that they had something that they wanted to share with the world, that their voice mattered. And so I think allowing your kids to be able to verbalize why or what they're doing has huge impact. Your other question was about
well, let me just reinforce your point.
Okay.
When I think of my ridiculous kitchen sink issue, all those elements were there. I talked about how proud I felt of myself when I did this stupid little thing that I didn't know how to do, but then I went out and taught myself how to do it. So all those things were there. I'll stop talking about the sink.
Okay.
No, the other one was about growth mindset. Go.
Yeah, that too. We have to build that into our classroom. It might be something like signage, right? What do kids see that can help them have that inner voice, maybe change? A lot of teachers will have phrases that they repeat. I know one of the teachers that I talk to teaches a leadership class, and he says, every day he says, what have you done for someone else today? And the other thing he always says is press pause. So he's trying to build in systems within his classroom that help kids train their inner voice. If we go back to coaching, right? Lots of coaches will use mantras or these triggers that will get kids to put their minds in the place where the coach thinks they need to be. We can't change a student's mindset, but we can we can make a difference and we can help them learn. Like a lot of kids haven't been taught. You can stop ruminating thoughts, or you can change how you feel through action, right? If you're having a really crappy day, you don't have to just sit in that. There are things that you can do. And I will ask my students to write mantras. And it is so fun to hear who they are in these little phrases. I'm thinking of a choir teacher too who I talked to, and she was saying that she uses mantras. She was having her students sing a song, and they were timid. They wouldn't really belt out the lyrics. And so she asked the kids to repeat after her, "I am a good singer." And she said, they did it at first. They're like, "I'm a good singer. I'm a good singer." Right? And then she's like, no, like you're repeating this mantra in the same way that you were singing, which is quiet and timid. And she's like, we can't have that. And so then she asked them to put their name before it. So each kid said, "I am Elizabeth, and I am a good singer." And she said she just went around and every kid in the choir did it. And she said then it was something that she was able to repeat in times when they needed it. They went back to that mantra and it helped. It helped them believe that they are a good singer. They can belt this out.
It is tough. I mean, there are some students who really struggle with depression, and it's hard to get them to look positively on life, and it might be above your pay grade to go too far. But here's the one thing that you do have in your control is you can be a good role model of a growth mindset. and we all can work on that as educators. Hey,
yes.
I just want to ask you a very important question in closing. I love how you have really given a lot of kudos to a lot of fellow educators. That's admirable, and I want to really compliment you on that. I'm going to ask you to do it one more time. I'll bet that there's a former teacher or a colleague, someone who greatly inspired you. And just like you're talking about your students, how they wanted to put their idea out to the world, this is your opportunity to really promote this person. How would you answer that?
Well, my book is dedicated to the educator who had the greatest impact on me.
Awesome.
Yeah, and that's my mom. My mom taught choir for 33 years.
Uh-huh.
And she's obviously, the educator that had the greatest impact on me, not only in our home, but outside of it as well, professionally, personally. She has helped me view education in the way that I view it. And she's also inspired me to take risks, to try something new, to always keep students at the core and the center of what I'm doing, and to come in every day and to be the best that I can be, to really focus on my own process every day.
What's her name?
Her name is Nancy Jorgensen.
Okay, Nancy Jorgensen, if you're listening, you need to be proud of your wonderful daughter.
Of course, my mom. Of course, I'm going to send it to her and make her listen.
Hey, what's going on in Liz Jorgensen's class tomorrow?
Yes, tomorrow we are working on a little genre of writing called 55 fiction. It's short stories. It's little micro novels told in exactly 55 words.
That's cool.
Oh my God, it's so cool.
Yeah, that's cool.
We talk about word economy. Lots of the kids are doing these amazing, didn't see you coming at the end, like a huge twist or something surprise or shocking. The kids are playing with dialogue and different pieces of punctuation, and it's appropriately challenging yet doable for the day before spring break starts.
Well, and it's really relevant because really relevant. Boy, there's there's a mouthful, but it's unfortunately or fortunately, it's people's attention span when they jump on a link online is not very long. So you do have to make your point, and you have to make it quickly in this day and age.
Well, and also with the 55 fiction, there's an audience for this. Mm-hmm. There is a publication that asks writers to submit their stories. And so our students, we write them, and then every single kid shares a couple of these stories with the class. And so we're talking about feedback, right? They put their piece up, and then 30 kids say, here's what I think, here's what I think, here's what I think. We collectively try to get our pieces as good as we can, and then we're going to send them off to the newspaper that is asking for them, and we'll have many of our students published or recognized for their writing.
You're going to have to take a Benadryl tonight because you're going to be pretty excited about tomorrow. You might have a hard time getting to sleep.
Yeah, yes. Well, I'm a pretty good sleeper, but I'm
jealous. Hey, thanks, friend. You've been awesome. Good luck with the book. I'll have links on the show notes. And good luck with the weather in Wisconsin in March, because I bet you have. I bet Old Man Winter comes back at some point.
Oh, at least 2 more times. Yep, at least 2.
Take care,
they say
my
it
friend.
snows on the tulips twice.
Oh, I got you. Take care, my friend.
Bye.
So here we are at the What You Can Do Tomorrow section, and I would like you to take an idea from this interview. You can take more than one, but maybe start with one and implement it tomorrow. I'll bet it's going to improve the learning experience for your students. And then I'd also like you to check out Liz's book on Amazon. It's full of a lot of ideas that might transform your classroom. As teachers, we often promote that our students need to assume a growth mindset. Let's practice what we preach. Take one of Liz's ideas and grow as an educator. And good luck tomorrow engaging those kids.
Show notes for this episode can be found at jamesalansturnevant.com. If you enjoy Hacking Engagement, please subscribe, rate, and review us on iTunes.